setting of the same. I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise. I'm gonna praise the Lord. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise. I'm gonna clap my hands. I'm gonna clap my hands. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, I'm gonna clap my hands. I'm gonna lift him up. I'm gonna lift him up. I'm gonna lift him up. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, I'm gonna lift him up. I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise the Lord. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna lift him up. I'm gonna lift him up. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, I'm gonna lift him up. I'm gonna clap my hands. I'm gonna clap my hands. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, I'm gonna clap my hands. I'm gonna praise the Lord. I'm gonna praise the Lord. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, I'm gonna praise the Lord. Amen.
Amen. Our scripture reading this morning will come from Psalms 1. And it reads, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of the mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. On his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers." May God have a blessing to the reading of his word.
Amen. Shall we pray? Gracious Father, our Lord in heaven, once again, Lord, we just say thank you.
Thank you, Lord.
For God, for you being God, and you being God all by yourself, Lord. We come this morning, Lord, just to lift your holy name, Lord. That men everywhere will see that you are mighty and wonderful in our lives, Lord. Lord, we thank you for this day, Lord. Downtrodden and without, Lord. We ask you, Lord, to send help right now, Lord, that they may be comforted and keep, Lord. Lord, right now we're praying for our bereaved families all over, Lord. We come lifting up the Thomas family to you right now, Lord. We ask you, Lord, that you comfort and keep them, Lord. Lord, we also pray for the Holman Street Church this morning, Lord, as they put their shepherd to rest, Lord. And Lord, we come lifting up Texas Southern University also, and the loss of Dr. Freeman, Lord, a man who always gave the youth a good word, Lord. Lord, we thank you for his life and his legacy and the things that he's done to enrich the young people of this city of Houston and all over the world, Lord. Lord, we need you. Lord, we can't make this journey without you, Lord. And And we ask you, Lord, to indwell in our hearts discernment this morning, Lord. Give us wisdom to know that what we see is always not what it is, Lord. Help us to hold on to our faith. Help us to hold on to the hope that you give us, Lord. That this too shall pass. And everything would be all right, Lord. We come lifting up our pastor, Pastor James W.Glynn, Pastor Carrie Asbury to you, Lord. Lord, we lift up their families and we ask you, Lord, to cover them right now in the name of Jesus. We come this morning, Lord, just to say how good you've been to us, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for covering us and keeping us doing all this pandemic and all this racism, Lord. Lord, we come just to say, Lord, we know that you're sovereign and that your will be done, Lord. No matter what we go through in this life, Lord, we know that we have hope in you and that things will get better, Lord. So we ask you, Lord, to cover our minds and cover our bodies, that we may not be, that you hide us in that secret place that you talk about, that you give us the strength each day to carry on, to be children of God, that we may live out our lives pleasing to you, Lord. We bless each and every home that's on this stream today, Lord. And we ask you, Lord, to cover each and every one of our members and those members who may not even be our members, Lord. We ask you to be with us, Lord, in times like this, Lord. And give us a peace that surpasses all time. Give us the strength that will let us hold on when trouble comes tomorrow. We love you, Lord. We can't make this journey without you. So we ask you, Lord, to just be with us. It's in the powerful and precious name of Jesus that I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Let's put your hands together as we do this song. I once was lost in sin, but Jesus took me in, and then a little light from heaven filled my soul. He bathed my heart with love, and he wrote my name above. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. I may have doubts and fears, my eyes are filled with tears, but Jesus is a friend that watches day and night. I go to him in prayer, he knows my every care. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes. Well, now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our trouble. He will hear our pain. I know he'll answer. Oh, when you feel, then you know that's fine. Let us have a little talk with Jesus. One more time. I once was lost in sin, but Jesus took me in, and then a little light from heaven filled my soul. He made my heart with love and wrote my name above. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our trouble. He will hear our pain. I know he'll answer. Well, when you feel, then you know. Let us have a little talk with Jesus. Well, I know he's all right. All right. All right. All right. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Well, I know he's all right. All right. All right. All right. All right. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Well, I know he's all right. All right. All right. right. Born in a manger. He's all right. All right. He's all right. All right. In the morning, he's all right. In the noonday, he's all right. He's all right. 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 Mama told me. All right. Daddy told me. All right. He's all right. All right. He's all right. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Well, he's all right. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. I know he's all right. I tried him for myself. I know he's all right. Woke me up this morning, letting me on my way. All right. All right. All right. All right. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. I know he's all right. All right. All right. All right. You know, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right.
Continuing to practice these safety protocols. We must be aware of what is occurring in our surroundings. These numbers are on the rise again in our county and surrounding areas as well as our city. And I think just a few more positive cases and a few more deaths will put us back on lockdown. And so, please, by all means, be careful. Birthdays for this week. On the 16th will be Sister Manda Johnson, celebrating another year of life. We thank God for you, Manda. We love you, and we celebrate with you. On the 19th, Sister Barbara Barr will be celebrating another year of life. We do thank God for you, and we love you, and we pray that God will bless you all during this time of celebration. Let me say thank you to those of you who came and poured into the lives of our graduates on yesterday. We thank you for celebrating them and for giving them encouragement to reach higher heights. Those who graduated from high school. Brother Colby Clark. Sister Annetta McGaffey. And Sister Miracle Morris. And then Sister Morgan Harris. Graduating from LSU. And there are some others that are connected to our church family. Two I know of is the grandsons of Sister Peggy McGuire. All right. They are graduating from high school and will be entering college in the fall. Amen. With however that will be. Yeah. Let us continue to lift in prayers our members who are laying to rest loved ones, or who have lain to rest loved ones. Sister Shalandra Proctor, with the homegoing of her mother, that service was on yesterday. We thank the Fifth Ward Church for accommodating the family. Also, the Wright and the Brazil family in the loss of their brother. The Johnson family of the Holman Street Church in laying to rest the shepherd, Pastor Manson B. Johnson, who has been a great friend and brother to the St. Mark Church for quite some time. Oh, yes. And then Dr. T.H. Freeman, pastor of the Mount Horeb Church, right around the corner, professor of philosophy and coach of the internationally acclaimed Texas Southern University debate team, who will be memorialized on Tuesday. Also, Brother Reginald Thomas, the husband of Sister Bernadette Thomas, the brother of Sister Shirley and Thelma Thomas. His homegoing will be this Friday, Juneteenth, at 10 a.m. at the Lockwood Funeral Home at 9402 Lockwood Drive, Lockwood and Tidwell. Please keep these families in prayer, that God would sustain them during this hour of bereavement. Amen. Since last Sunday, many things have changed and altered. In our nation, facing our country. Yesterday, I spent the balance of my time after the funeral reading and preparing, and had a little problem with the toilet in my bathroom. And so in trying to repair it internally, I broke a major piece. Oh, Lord. And so I had to go and buy another toilet. And I went back to doing what I was doing because I knew I didn't have time to install it. Amen. I got up this morning a little bit after 5 and sat with my coffee, just running the text through my mind. Pressed the button after about 35 minutes on my tablet to began to read in my study program. And I was searching for something. I opened the window to begin my search, and as it pulled up a new window, that was a news flash. Another slain African American, Rashard Brooks, about 27 years old, in Atlanta, Georgia, was shot by the police at a Wendy's. The young brother had fallen asleep, inebriated or not, we don't know. They had detained him for about 30 minutes, and I'm pretty sure after about 3 minutes, they should have come to the conclusion either he needs medical attention, psychological attention, or we need to just bring him in and let him sleep it off. But it took 30 minutes, and this was outside of camera range. And what I saw was him fleeing from the police, having a taser in his hand, turning back, pointing it at the officer, and then the officer fired, I don't know how many shots, and they took him to the hospital, and the young man did not survive. What grabbed my attention is that I'm tired of trying to explain away the death of black men, black people in general, or of trying to overly support the policing agencies, because it's occurring far too frequently. And they say that there has been a decline in the shooting of blacks since 2015. But we still are being killed disproportionately. Now, this occurred after they found the young man hanging in Palmdale, California, from a tree, who they've already said it was suicide. And so these things must be investigated. But as Dave Chappelle said the other day, I don't want you to take my silence for complicity, because I really do care. I really am impacted by it, because I have nephews. I have sons in this church, not biological, but being here 29 years, I can say sons, no matter what age they are. And it's becoming painfully aware that the Constitution has not met her date with destiny, nor the Declaration of Independence, which is a document that need to be read, because it talks about removing yourself to gain better treatment. And we are supposed to be equal before the law. Equal before the law. And very often we are not. In Jeremiah chapter 31, at verse 15 says, "Thus saith the Lord, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping, Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not.
All right.
We can be critical, and I know I can, concerning Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes. Amen.
But I've not sat down with one officer in the movement to ask them to explain to me certain details of the movement. But I've discovered that there is a reason they keep yelling out, say their name, because they do not want them to be forgotten.
Yes, that's right.
And there is this possibility of their plight, their end, their tragic end being forgotten.
Yes.
We should become disturbed and understand that we probably had some of the recalcitrant rebellion in us when we were their age. But there was not, I guess, this being able to, this microwaving of information. That's probably where it's better at. Of being able to push it through these mediums all across the globe. And therefore, we did not have that at our disposal. And possibly, and then it was just a different time, a different era. And I'm sure that many of us who are my age, in my peer group, had it been this way then, we would have been out there marching. And so we can become critical, but one thing is we can become calloused. And we can become anesthetized to a lot of things because of where we are in life. We've been insulated, as it was, from some things, because many have been accorded and afforded the ability to work on a job for quite some time, to have maybe retired from the job, to have some creature comforts, to have moved outside of the community that you grew up in. And that was your decision. I'm not casting dispersions that, we should have remained to do this and to do that. Things happened that way. But we should put a governor on our critiquing until we understand from their vantage point. But what we've got to do is look for the information, because our neighborhoods used to be places where we were insulated, where we were isolated, where we were educated, and then we were incubated. Our fathers and our mothers made sure of that. That is no longer the case. And we view some things through a different kind of lens. But one thing we know is that our neighborhoods have always been killing fields.
Yes, sir.
I'm not talking about black on black crime because you simply kill where you live. That type of thing happened. But I'm talking about them who don't look like us, primarily from the policing agency, who do not look like us, coming in, taking advantage of us because they have a badge and a gun. You can go to some of our senior men and ask them. I'm looking at Deacon Clay. His grandfather and father would tell you that police knew where the gambling shack was and would walk in on a payday night and hold them up and leave with all of that money. And then to have Sergeant Clarence Cooper Jr., better known as Sonny, one day telling me, Pastor, the biggest dope dealer in Fifth Ward is a police officer. And some should not be policing. The hotbeds happen to be in the metropolitan areas. But think about the area where Marbury was killed, that little enclave in Georgia. I grew up in a small town where maybe the uncle was sheriff. The nephew needed a job, so they hired him to do some policing. And this cat probably could not have passed a civil servant examination if they had blocked off half of the answers. And that's the way it is. And then the police unions, one of the only unions that is not attacked by the federal government to dismantle. And I'm not here to stand and just downbeat police officers, because there are good police officers. But when the mayor of the city cannot just outright fire a policeman without going through 125 steps, but also if he is removed from serving in Houston, he can just go down the street to Fresno. So he's just simply changing one town's name on his badge for another, and that is not right. We are looking at this, and this passage of Scripture painfully reminds us of mournfulness and of weeping. Maybe it does not affect us as it should, because many of us do not have a son who leaves the house going to work, and you do not know if a traffic stop will end in ending his life. The Constitution says, we the people of the United States. I was born in the United States. I served in the military. It's all right for me to lay down my life for the country, but the country will not lay down her life for me. Because although I served, and I served honorably, I was honorably discharged, I still need a Voting Rights Act in order for me to vote. That it's amazing. The white child that has just been born has more rights in America than I do, and I've lived here 60 years. That's amazing. So when they say we the people, are they meaning everybody or just a select few? Because they're talking about, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense. That's one area where we need to really look into. Promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We know that is not true for citizens of color. And the sitting president on Juneteenth is launching his bid for re-election. Juneteenth, our day of emancipation in the South. And he's doing it in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the place of Black Wall Street, to let us know you're not free, and economically we will continue to depress you. Now, I know many of you are saying, well, you know, Pastor just ain't preaching this morning. I am preaching a liberation gospel. And if you all got a problem with that, you got the church's address. Just come and see me. And this is not to the members of St. Mark. I'm talking about the others that will critique this and say, he wasted the time on a Sunday morning. When else do I have this medium? Because we are in a critical place. Even our Declaration of Independence says, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by God with unalienable rights, which among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life. Because this thing about Rachel weeping for her children arises in Matthew, when Herod passed the edict, kill all males from 2 years and under. It may not be written in their archives, but I'm sure it's been shared in their boardrooms. An all-out assault on black males. How else do you keep us from reaching that rate of maturation? Incarceration, or just outright killing, or infecting them with some drug. And we've been denied these rights, unless you look like a Native American. You've been imported to this country, and so you don't own it. But we know how those things are and how they go. Jeremiah is talking concerning Israel and her returning from exile. A remnant. It has allusions to the 10 northern tribes, of only which God will regather. But it's this voice that is heard in Ramah. Rachel is the mother of Joseph and Benjamin. Rachel was that chief bride of Jacob, but she was barren. But God blessed her to have 2 sons. Benjamin was the last born, but she died in childbirth. But with her last breath, she declared, name him Benoni or Benoni. Ben in Hebrew simply means son. But the Oni can be a noun or a verb, simply in how it is being employed, which means that Ben-Oni was the son of my trouble, of my trial, of my tribulation. He is the son of what I experienced in life. It was trouble for her to remain barren in the face of Leah, her own sister, who promoted it before her. I may not be the prettiest one, but I'm more functional than you. And then for them in the community to cast dispersions upon her. Maybe God does not like you. And so that was a mark that society had placed upon Rachel. There is a mark society has placed upon black people, that we are inferior from the others who enjoy liberties that we do not. And many of us have grown up in tribulation. We've experienced some things in life that has allowed us to understand that the other side of the track simply does not like us. And so whenever we come out and we talk against it, then we are inciting riots. That we are pulling the race card when we didn't know anything about race. Race is a learned behavior. But Rachel, weeping for her sons, it's, you know, lifted in Matthew, but this place, Ramah, was allotted to the tribe of Benjamin because of its historical significance. They knew Jacob had buried Rachel near Ramah. Ramah is situated kind of between Bethel and Bethlehem, which factors prominently as a landmark in the life of the patriarchs. But this became a spot where the captives were assembled before exile. It's where they were brought before they were taken into Babylon. Now, I ain't got all day to talk about, we know where we come from, and we know where was the junction seat over in Ghana. But it's this bitter weeping. Because Rachel's story sets her apart from other Israelites. She had a grave, but never a home. She never went, she never made it into the promised land. She died on the way in childbirth, expressing her sorrow. Not every mother will give up her life in childbirth. So there is something exceptional and profound about Rachel going this extent, because it shows a mother's love. Because she's a mother who does not forget her children. Part of that rhetoric that comes up in the Black Lives Matter. But she continues to live through the lives of her descendants as it relates to where her tomb was placed, that it was near Bethlehem. And her weeping signifies the weeping of families who have lost children. And we know mothers have factored prominently in our movements because of them losing their son. They fit the image and the persona of Rachel, not being comforted. Even if there is a civil settlement in the lawsuit, really, how much money will comfort you in the loss of a child? How much money does it take to replace a child? I can answer that for you. No amount of money. But if there's anyone who understands the murder of a child, of a son, it is God our Father. And so we are in good company. I'm not preaching out of turn, but we've got to understand that this passage and this chapter is filled with great eschatological hope. And that's what we have, is the hope that there will be a better tomorrow for our children. Because if I go out into the streets and I campaign, it is not for me. It is not for my benefit. It is for the benefit of my youngest daughter. It is for the benefit of my grandchildren. It is for the benefit of the children to whom I pastor. We didn't create this, and we didn't start this, but we are right in the middle of this. And we've got to respond to it. We cannot simply be silent or we be critical. We should be supportive. We should sit down and talk with them. Children, I've got information to pass on to you that is crucial and that is necessary. But I need to listen at what you are saying and guide you where you're being misled or misguided, and to add to you the package that we've received from our foreparents. On your next step of what is necessary. But God speaks to us, and he says, refrain from your weeping and from your voice of lament, for your work will be rewarded, and you'll return from the land of the weeping. Thank God for the assurances that we have in God. That there are no cliches, only assurances. It's nothing that can be given that really can satisfy the lamenting of a soul other than the assurances of God. I heard Dr. Gardner Calvin Taylor say some time ago that our Constitution and our Declaration of Rights have a rendezvous with history and with time, and that God has a way of ushering in. Think about it. Nearly 120 people have been shot by the police since the COVID-19 shutdown, which exceeds more than in the past several years, up to this time. Because where we are in the middle of the year, they are already on point to eclipse the number of deaths related to police in the previous years. If it continues, and we don't see any stopping, if anything, we see them becoming more brazen.
Yeah. That's right.
And the over-policing in our community. Because what happened in Atlanta, they sent the troops in. Well, that's an occupation. Why wouldn't you go to community leaders and say, we need you all out on the street? We'll give you whatever you need in order to go on the streets and try and diffuse it. But you are pouring gas on an already burning building. You are occupied. And anyone come in my community, I'm paying for my house. I'm paying my community dues. And you tell me when I can come in and come out. You gonna get some grief from me. Close up the bank and tell me you may or may not give me my money back. I may throw a brick through the window. And then what they did to George Floyd, I really don't know if I could just stand there and watch that. I may end up dead like him. But in the military, if an officer is not commanding according to the rules and regulations, you have a right to remove him from command. Why do we not have a right to approach police officers and say, that's enough? Now you need to call your superiors and let them come. And if it's an altercation, you know, brother, you're going to stand right here and we're going to advocate. But we stand in jeopardy of losing our lives. They can't be right all the time. There is human error in everything. We are steadily weeping. Are we trying to comfort our Rachels in our communities? Because many are not using this time for a movement, but for their moment. Not a movement, but for their moment. And utilizing it to make money. Profiteering. Because at the funeral, in the Home Depot parking lot, people had come from New York City to sell Black Lives Matter paraphernalia. Now, I probably wouldn't have had a problem with folk from our community. But that just means you're trying to make a profit. Now, in your profit, are you going to give some of those proceeds to George's children? And we know that we have a problem. You saw that with the brother who was bird watching in the park. And for the white woman who just had her dog all jacked up. But you do know that they will send you to jail longer for killing a dog than a police officer gets for murder. Thank you. Just go and look at it. Michael Vick. And they still hate him. He was fighting dogs. Vic wasn't fighting dogs. They were being fought on his property. So that there is this duality. I have to hang on the assurances of God. But hanging on the assurances of God does not negate my input nor action. I can just say, God is going to do it in his own time, but who's to say I'm not the agent? You're not the agent. We're not the agent. Because we know we can come together and pray, and that is fine and well. But we've got to do something outside of these walls and stop thinking every young black man, because he has his pants down below his waist, is a threat. He does not know any better. He's ignorant. And I'm not saying he's unlearned, but he's ignorant concerning some things, and maybe we've not been out there for them. To give them this assurance that is found in the scripture. Because we should thank God that this has not been the norm in St. Mark, that in our families, our sons have been saved, and daughters as well, because there were the young ladies that we've lost, the one that was simply in her house, eating her supper, and a no-knock principle. And then you need to look at St. Louis. St. Louis government was underwritten by the black community through the policing of it, the crimes, the courts, all of that. Because you know, generally in our community, Pookie get picked up something, Big Mama go put her house in holler to get him out on bond. I'm not saying that's right. I simply know my Pookie, if I've taught my Pookie, and my Pookie get in trouble because of something my Pookie did, my Pookie gonna have to face the consequences. Because that's the way I was brought up. If it does not belong to you, if you did not buy it and it was not given to you, I don't care what it is, leave it right where it is. And then to go and do what you do in order to make money that they've declared is illegal, then you need to go and find you a legal occupation. No matter what the struggle is. Because part of the problem is materialism. They're looking at what others got. You can go to college. They're begging for our young men at Texas Southern to go into the School of Pharmacy. Young men to work in a Walgreens or a hospital, and you're commanding a 6-figure salary with just having 6 years of college education. Or to go on to medical school. Don't tell me you can't do it. Because if you can learn to dribble a basketball, run a football, you can learn academically. Amen. For the most part, many of you. I mean, but if you've got to start it when you start giving them a ball. Think about the amount of time practice and games take. But educationally, we will not test them to their limit like some sport will. Oh, he's a beast in the lane. He's a beast running up the field. What about a beast in a textbook? And they will return from the land of the enemy. Now we know that's filled with eschatology. But we can return from the land of the enemy in our mindset. We can return from the land of the enemy in what Elijah Muhammad preached decades ago. Do for self. There are black entities and enterprises that we need to tap into to support our own and begin to model what was being proclaimed. Even Martin King was moving toward a bread basket. Mickey Leland was moving toward a bread basket. Ron Brown was moving toward a bread basket. I guess they texting me that I need to shut up. K&G. But he says your work will be rewarded. Sowing in the life of our babies, your work will be rewarded. Our school, and I know I talk about Atherton a lot, but she's right in our lap, clamors for us to come and just pour in the life. Even if you don't do nothing but just walk down the hall and go, good morning, how are you? All right, straighten that up. that kind of presence. It's the ministry of presence. But we like the ministry of presence. P-R-E-S-E-N-T-S. We would just rather give them some tennis shoes and give them a phone and give them this and that. And they readily appreciate it, but they also expect it, and they think that they are entitled. Without giving them that is vital and necessary, because we will not be here always. But God has given us these assurances, and we must lay claim to them, because this world is not our home, and we should always teach them that. I don't care how much you buy, you're not taking it with you. Yesterday at the cemetery, there was only a hearse, no U-Haul. No matter what their favorite item was, it was not put in the ground with them. And there was one funeral after the other. Because as the family was standing around hugging, the mortician was saying, you got to go back to your cars and get on. There's another one waiting at the gate. Folk are just dying to get into the cemetery, but they're not taking anything with them. And so we've got to teach them another way and a better way. Because we are not the only people who have endured this, who have gone through this, who have been judged. Well, we, by the color of our skin. Same thing with the Jews. They didn't look like the Germans. He says, will be turned back. It's a physical movement, because there are plenty of things we need to turn back. And with us being where we are in this COVID-19, it's an excellent opportunity. As I've been sharing on the prayer line, that God did not put us in this place for nothing. And that when we emerge, there has to be a difference as it relates to how we've been operating Sunday in and Sunday out. That there are going to be some alterations and some changes surely in our soul, surely in our person. Just think about the amount of time we've been down and folk have been binge watching television programs instead of trying to do something a little bit more efficacious. To them who've been working from home, because there are others who've had to get out and get after it. But there is this reward in what we are going through. Thank you for allowing me to just share that during this time. I was not trying to be exciting. I was not trying to string together any cliches, but to use this time to just kind of speak to us to know things may get worse before they get better, because they will not go quietly into that good night. As I heard a brother say, 100 brothers with guns, they have a response for that. But 100 brothers showing up at the voting poll, they don't have a response for that. And young folk, you all got to look for somebody who has the same mindset. You can't just elect anybody. It's like with Harold Dutton, folk. It's time for him to go. Harold been there so long, do you understand what all got to be uprooted, removing him? Number one, he studied the law. So he's using the law in order to effect change. If you don't know law or political science, You're just utilizing rhetoric. All that we may say about Sheila, she knows the law. She's gone to law school. But surely we've got to make those who are younger a little bit more aware politically and astute. And those of you who do vote, take 10 people with you. Encourage 10 people. If all of us encourage 10 people to go vote, and it's coming up for our representative in 142 in several weeks. I think June 29th, they begin early voting. It's going for a few weeks because they have caught up in the court this absentee voting because the Republicans are saying it's rift with fraud. But we've been doing that for some time, voting absentee. And with what's going on, surely, but they don't think it's nothing to this virus. But as soon as they open it up and you're eligible to vote, you need to go and vote. But I would advocate take 10 people with you. And we need to pray. We seriously need to pray for our nation. That change would come without it having to be marshaled. Look to this word and listen at what God said to the children of Israel and what he says to us, because that assurance is still available to us. Pray that you meet us on the prayer line this evening. Pray and trust that God will continue to bless your life. Continue to practice these safe distances and these things and look to the Lord. I ask that you would pray for my cousin and his family, Pastor Bobby Hamilton. His bride is undergoing chemotherapy for lung cancer. But her brother died the other day. I thought brother was pretty healthy. And I guess you could say one great thing, he was on a Zoom and they saw something not right with him. Called the paramedics. They had to break the door down to his home. And he was one of the administrators at Prairie View A&M University. So we want to be in prayer for them and for the family while they are going through what they are going through at this time. Those of you who are doing the Givelify, I pray that you would continue to support our efforts. As I stated last week, we are doing some refreshing and some updating. I need you to give to the building fund. Every time you pull a board loose, something else happens. So we've got some more work we've discovered, and it was while other work was going on. They didn't hit a gas line. They didn't tear nothing up. It just decided to go haywire itself. And so let us continue to give to that and get everything back the way that it was. Be in prayer for these families who have lost loved ones at the hands of anybody. Taking a life is bad in and of itself. But to have that life taken by the ones who are supposed to be protecting life is egregious. As a minister of the gospel, when I preach the word, I'm held to a higher standard. I have no problem with that. But when you're supposed to know the law and the keeper of the law, and you infringe the law, you should be held at a higher standard. Just as it is with them giving this officer second-degree murder, I don't think so. It should be capital murder. Because he was judge, jury, and executioner. Now I'm getting back into something else. So we're just going to pray that God will sustain us. Let us look to the Lord continually pray his grace, his mercy, and his peace amongst our people and the other people. Because I don't see how you can stand and declare in your pulpit and be silent on this issue when you reach a broader audience than I. No one in this country, in this world, is any better than anyone else. I care not how much money you have, what political office you hold, or even how poor you are. On the day of judgment, we all are going to stand before the Lord. And because of your power and prestige you had here, will not impact anything over there.